We all carry certain bad habits, but while many of us can keep them in check, for others they take root so deeply that they twist the mind, straining relationships and at times warping thought patterns beyond repair. Addiction is often defined as a chronic and recurring condition driven by the relentless urge to seek and use substances despite harmful outcomes, yet dependence can form in other ways too. And one artist who understands this firsthand is Kanye, who admitted in multiple interviews that his exposure to adult content traces back to the age of 5, when he accidentally came across something that once belonged to his father.
Like for me, Playboy was my gateway into full-on addiction. My dad had a Playboy left out at age 5, and it's affected almost every choice I made for the rest of my life from age 5.
From the very start of his career, Kanye laced his music with crude nods to that world, and soon his appetite spilled over into his dating life when he got involved with one of the most talked-about glamour models of her time. Though he stopped short of dating an actual adult star, his high-profile relationship with Amber Rose ushered him into a bold, hypersexualized chapter, both personally and musically. Later remarking that he needed 30 showers, Kanye funneled the chaos of that romance, along with the fallout from the infamous Taylor Swift VMAs incident, into the creation of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, the record hailed as his magnum opus, packed with his wildest depictions of excess yet. Tracks like Monster, Runaway, Blame Game, and especially Hell of a Life showcased this theme, with the latter even foreshadowing his marriage to Kim Kardashian as he rapped about one day marrying a star and living lavishly without shame. But before that prophecy became reality, one of his collaborators peeled back the curtain on his process. Nicki Minaj, who delivered a career-defining verse on Monster, recalled her surprise when Kanye, instead of rejecting overt sexuality, surrounded the studio with artsy nude photos and openly invited her to view them while he worked. To her, it revealed a side she hadn't expected. Yet for Kanye, it was simply part of his creative rhythm, normalized by his superstar status. That fixation ultimately bled into his fascination with Kim Kardashian, the figure behind the most infamous tape of all time. And when they got together, he wore it like a badge of honor, even immortalizing it on Click, with bars that celebrated her rise from a leaked video to global stardom. What began as another headline-grabbing fling soon evolved into marriage and 4 children. But as he admitted years later on Jimmy Kimmel, even becoming a father wasn't enough to silence his addiction.
Do you feel like your attitude towards women has changed since having daughters?
Nah, I still look at and
What kind of stuff do you look at? What categories?
black is my favorite category. What's the point of being Kanye West if you can't?
In truth, Kanye never treated monogamy with any real seriousness, and during the Saint Pablo tour, he openly bragged about infidelity. According to one insider, after Saint was born, Kanye had a full-on breakdown in front of his team, confessing to cheating on Kim with multiple women and even going into explicit detail about groupies and wild encounters. The language was so unfiltered it disturbed those who knew him well. Some nervously laughed with their heads in their hands, while newer crew members were stunned by the rawness of his admissions. By this stage, Kanye's fixation on sex had regressed into something almost juvenile, spilling across the life of Pablo with lines that made even his most desensitized fans pause. His infamous Famous video, which featured wax figures of Taylor Swift, Kim, Trump, Bush, and Bill Cosby, made his obsession impossible to ignore, yet strangely, this was also the moment he grew most conflicted about Kim's sexuality. "It's like half and half," Kim admitted to Ellen, explaining that while Kanye encouraged her to feel confident and expressive, like when she posed for Paper magazine, he was still bothered deep down. Even as he flaunted his fantasies publicly, his dissent reached a darker level when he actually designed the set for an award ceremony hosted by the biggest adult site in the world. Looking back, Kanye would pinpoint 2018, the same year he alienated fans with his Trump support, as the turning point when his addiction began to truly derail his life. That year, following the release of Ye, he dropped 2 of his most sexually charged songs ever. On XTCY, he leaned into his most depraved thoughts, rapping about fantasies involving his sisters-in-law with lines so unholy they sounded like self-parody, while I Love It, with Lil Pump, premiered at the Hub Awards, took his fixation mainstream, turning it into a viral meme. In hindsight, Kanye himself would later recognize that period not as a creative peak, but as the moment where his compulsions began steering his life in the wrong direction.
I got to a point where I was always letting that Playboy magazine that I found when I was 5 years old have an effect on my music. It could never be 100% everything it could be, because I had to add that in, always. And it got to the point where literally I went from Jesus Walks to You're Such a I Love It. This fit right in with everything we got to deal with opioids. This fit right in with everything we got that promotes killing so that we can have more slaves in the mass incarceration.
Why did you make it?
Because I was asleep, because I was drowned, because I was lost.
Kanye would later describe the track as something born out of being completely lost, and its release coincided with the unraveling of his marriage. By 2020, it was revealed that he and Kim had turned to an intimacy specialist, with one insider noting that the therapist was offering them strategies to reignite the spark in their sex life. A few years earlier, counseling had managed to rescue their relationship, and they were hoping lightning might strike twice. Yet the root of Kanye's turmoil kept circling back to sex and the media that endlessly chronicled it. And as his addiction once again pushed his marriage to the brink of collapse, he sought solace in the only other constant that had carried him through his darkest moments: his faith.
When I was in my lowest points, God was there with me and sending me visions and inspiring me. And I remember sitting in the hospital at UCLA after having a mental breakdown, and there's documentations of me drawing a church and start a church in the middle of Calabasas.
Before long, Kanye began stepping away from secular music altogether, pouring his energy instead into spreading the gospel through his own Sunday service movement. As he promoted his album, Jesus is King, much of the press run centered on him opening up about the struggles he had endured while battling the temptations that had consumed him for years. Some people drown themselves in drugs, he admitted, and I drown myself in my addiction, sex.
God was patient, and my family was patient for me when they were praying for me. When they saw me at the awards, they couldn't tell me not to do it. All they could do was pray and be patient, and it had to happen in God's time. So for me, when I have people around who I would like them to be where I'm at in my journey, all I could do is pray and be patient, because it's going to only be in God's time.
Shifting from a man consumed by lust to one grounded in deep faith, Kanye openly detailed the drastic measures he took in order to preserve his spiritual purity.
This is going to be radical. There's times where I was asking people to not have premarital sex while they were working on the album.
Even though he devoted himself fully to gospel and vowed to live a righteous life, it still wasn't enough to salvage his marriage. And on the next album, Ye confronted how his own betrayal brought it crashing down on Hurricane, spitting here, I go, acting too rich, here I go with a new chick, and I know what the truth is still playing after 2 kids. It's a lot to digest when your life's always moving, once proud of the very things he later condemned. Kanye swung hard in the opposite direction and made holiness the centerpiece of his work. His stance on the material he once glorified grew more radical with time, even claiming it was the root cause behind everything that fell apart in his life.
This addiction since I was 5 years old that has destroyed my mom and my dad's family, that destroyed my family. When I take full accountability for the destruction of my marriage, I'll point at the liberals and say, you took my wife from me. You know what took my wife from me? The fact that I was married to this beautiful person, but I felt like it wasn't enough. I felt like I still needed to look at in some way. I'd say to her, well, stop making these images, stop breaking the internet.
So disturbed by the idea of his kids encountering harmful content that he refused to let them use TikTok. Ye became determined to shield his loved ones from what he believed was the very evil that ruined his world. Yet even while trying to guard others in the middle of his own darkness, he slipped back into old habits.
Since I lost my wife, since I lost my family, and I was no longer the priest right in the middle of that home, I let the devil pull me in. Next thing you know, I'm at New Year's Eve parties having threesomes.
But while Ye may have attempted to overcome his addiction, his fixation on the past was destined to resurface with clips leaking of him showing explicit material to executives during contract talks, making it clear that the habit still had him in a chokehold. He showed me the video of Francesca Lee, a buff star. A former collaborator revealed to Rolling Stone, saying he asked, "What do you think of it?" dead serious during meetings. He'd pull up his laptop and play adult videos. Another employee recalled he'd admit, "I know it's uncomfortable, but I kind of need this running in the background to stay focused," from confessing that he pirated adult content on Reddit despite being a billionaire, to later announcing in November 2022 a 30-day cleanse. None of it stopped him from sliding back into old patterns at his 46th birthday in June. 2023, he even served sushi off women's bodies while flaunting constant PDA with his new wife, though such habits arguably fueled some of his greatest eras like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and The Life of Pablo. It's obvious those early images scarred Ye's mind permanently. The bigger question now is whether in mounting his comeback, he can finally tame the fire and keep balance with his addiction, or let it tear him down all over again. Only time will tell.